Hello, everybody. Welcome to innerGamers, a podcast about developing and using video games for promoting mental health well-being. My name is Mike, and today we'll be talking about an interesting game of Celeste. Well, a lot of people can say that they have movies or books or games that have changed their life in some way. They influenced their mental health and they helped them form a different perception of the world. And video games are very unique in that sense that they offer you the opportunity to be a part of the story, right? So Celeste is also a very interesting game in that regard. So I'll discuss first the story of Celeste, but also then how it goes into the gameplay and how the story elements and how all the narratives are woven into the gameplay of the game itself. The story revolves around the journey of a girl called Madeline, who is depressed, who is searching for something in her life, for fulfillment, and she doesn't really know what to do with her life, and so she decides to climb the Celeste mountain. The story is a very beautiful depiction of self-discovery and searching for meaning and communicating with yourself, in a sense. The game opens with the monologue of Madeline saying, "Just breathe. Why are you so nervous?" And that's already a small little hint at what is happening in her mind. She constantly is worried, she's constantly anxious, and this will be reflected later in the game. In fact, this anxious part of Madeline becomes a character in the game. It becomes a physical being that will be talking with Madeline and in fact will be screwing up a lot of things because this other part of Madeline is the personification of her depression and anxiety as she thinks. There were multiple parts of the game where everything would have been completely fine if not for that other part. For example, there was an interaction in one section of the game where you were stuck in a hotel and one person there is very, very persistent about you staying in the hotel even though it's clearly abandoned and doesn't have anything in there. And the other part of Madeline is becoming aggressive towards him, and she's making the interaction toxic. And at the end of the day, she enrages the hotel owner, Mr. Oshiro, and what happens is the first boss fight of the game is actually just a sweet, kind guy who he was just very persistent on pleasing her and giving her a good room, but that other part of her, she got into this interaction and she broke it. Another part of the game where the other part of her messes things up is when she's riding a tram up the mountain, and in the middle of the ride, the other part stops the train and she starts having a panic attack. And what's interesting in the game is that it really uses very strong visuals and audio to show how it is to have a panic attack and how Madeline is struggling with breathing and how everything seems stopped and everything seems like, you know, if nothing changes right now, we're doomed. We're stuck in this train forever in this Celeste mountain on top of nowhere. And what's very valuable here is that she was with a friend, and the friend helped her get out of this panic attack as he showed her a technique, a breathing technique, a feather technique, which was you close your eyes and you imagine a feather falling, and with your inhale and your exhale, you can make it go down and up. And so in times of panic attack, you could use this to control your breathing and focus more and relax a bit. And what I like about this is that it is a story part, which is also useful for people who are struggling with those things. And it is added to the gameplay very seamlessly, as it literally has like a small mini game that has a feather falling, and you have to control your breathing with a button, and so you sort of need to keep the feather in the center, which is in my opinion, very smooth, very smart way to incorporate the story element into the gameplay. There are a few more moments in the game in terms of the story which are worth mentioning. One place was a temple of internal worries, I'd call it that. It's a place where the worries of Madeline become physical. So she enters a world, like a parallel dimension, where everything that she's scared of is real, and it's manifested into this weird place with weird monsters that are haunting her, and she's constantly scared, and she thinks that she will not be able to escape that, while her friend, who is also with her there, he also experiences this, where his worries manifest, but his worries manifest in a different way. They manifest in him being stuck in a crystal, which is also a common pattern for people to close themselves, to isolate themselves from others when they have worries, when they have anxieties, and when they're sad. And so this is really interesting how in the game it shows different people from different perspectives and how they see those things differently, how they live through such things differently. Another interesting part of the game was very, very introspectional. It was the bonfire, where the main character, Madeline, she's just sitting there with her friend Otto, and they just talk. For the first time in the game, they just sit down and talk. You know, they have a very peaceful conversation. And one thing that struck me there was the storytelling of Madeline. Like throughout the entire game, you don't really see her talking about her experience. It's all communicated through visual language, through the game itself, through music, through visuals that always complement those intense moments and adapt to the game, making it feel really unique, as if you're living through it. And here we see them just talk. And Otto asks her how depression is like. It feels like I'm at the bottom of the ocean. I can't see anything in any direction. It's claustrophobic, yet I feel exposed. I remember feeling normal, but now it feels just out of reach, no matter how I try. Then again, I was probably always messed up. There must be something wrong with me. I'm just swimming in this floating abyss in random directions, hoping that I find something. So we see that she has this distorted view of herself. She sees that she is clearly depressed. She thinks that something about her is wrong, and she decides that this other part of her that has been breaking so many things for her has to go, that she has to get rid of it. And so after that, she decides to confront that other part. And she decides to get rid of it. She goes and tells that other part that I don't need you anymore. This part of me should not exist because you are messing things up. You are making everything worse. And I don't need this. I don't need this to be a part of me. But the thing is that the other part of her was not very happy to hear that. And because of this, the other part was also very scared for herself. And she overwhelmed Madeline completely. She took her into another panic attack where this time around, even the feather didn't work. The feather technique didn't work in the way where the game tried to give you this opportunity to use it, but then it breaks. And everything goes wrong, and Madeline falls all the way from the almost top of the mountain to the very bottom of the mountain. And that is where she spends her time contemplating what was happening. You see, this is an interesting pattern with people who struggle with depression, is that they think that this part of them that is making everything worse is a part of them that they need to get rid of. But it actually self-sabotages everything because you need to have a good relationship with it. And this is what Madeline comes to terms with. She understands that that other part of her is still a part of her. And that is a part of her that is afraid, that is a part of her that is scared, and that wants to protect her. She didn't say that she will not be able to climb the mountain because she was trying to, insult her. It was more about self-preservation. She wanted to make sure that Madeline is okay. And, being at home, being in comfort is safer than climbing a mountain. And so on this last level of contemplation, at the end, Madeline comes to that other part of her, and she fights her once again, but in a different way. She persuades her, and she tries to just talk with her calmly. And in the end, she tells her that, let's do it together. And that goes into the final part of the game where Madeline, embracing her other self, embracing this part of her that is scared and that is anxious, she becomes stronger than ever. And from the very bottom of the mountain, she reaches the top with her other self helping her. So this way she harmonizes with herself, she embraces herself, she embraces her imperfections, and is able to reach the goal that she set for herself from the very start. So now I'll touch a little bit more on the gameplay side of the game, as the story is truly beautiful. It depicts how it feels to live through depression and anxiety, and how it feels to embrace yourself. But it also tells a lot through the gameplay itself, which is very interesting in case of Celeste. First of all, this story is great, but you can imagine how that probably must not be easy to go through such a thing. Well, gameplay reflects that. Celeste is not an easy game. It is a precision platformer where you have to be very careful about how you move. And to be honest, I spent around 11 hours finishing the game without collecting any sort of additional rewards, meaning that I just went through the story. And it was difficult. It was difficult. It was very difficult. It is like climbing a mountain, and it actually fits the story because, well, she's climbing a mountain, and it's not supposed to be easy. And what I love about it is that despite it being very difficult, very challenging, like you could die 50 times in one single room of the game nodes are always friendly. They give you encouragement, they tell you to take breaks, and they try to say that failure is good, because with failure you grow, and with failure you become better. And this is what I really like about the game, is despite it providing you a very strong challenge, it also encourages you, and it always keeps you motivated. It always keeps you safe in a way. It always says that this is a safe place and you can fail as much as you want. Some other things that are reflected in the gameplay were, for example, the fact that the other part of you in the first encounter with her, she follows you by the same movements that you did a moment ago. So it's a small little detail, but it shows that this is still a part of you, and it goes around the same path that you walked, always. And even the game itself says that you cannot outrun yourself because, well, she always follows the same path in the same timing. And another thing with the reunion of the other self and Madeline was that once she embraced herself, once she embraced that other part of her, she gained a power-up inside the game. So inside the game, you have a dash, and when she gets to this self-acceptance, she has an extra dash. So she gets a double dash, which actually changes quite a lot, and it helps Madeline to climb the mountain much faster. That is a very interesting way to integrate the storytelling into the gameplay. The last thing I wanted to touch upon is something that the player can sort of take from this experience. I think, first of all, for people who have experienced depression, I think they will resonate with this game a lot because, well, even without saying much during the gameplay, you understand the meaning through those little pauses, through those little conversations with the other NPCs. And it tells a beautiful story about the interpersonal connections, about understanding yourself, about the narrative of your life and how you perceive it. And I think the players can really use that and get inspired by it. And it even goes into certain concepts that are a big thing in psychology. For example, I would say that the other self is a direct reference to the Jung's theory of the shadow, and saying that the shadow is a part of your personality that is often restrained, that often has more anxieties and desires and things that you try to avoid, but the more you repress it, the more it will sabotage you. And that's what Jung was saying in psychology over 50 years ago. And here it's a very beautiful way to show that same concept in a game. Another concept that I think works really well with a lot of games, and this one specifically, is Carol Dweck's growth mindset. As it says that if you have a mindset that promotes growth, you are more likely to grow. And the game is trying to show you this. The game is trying to frame everything in a way where, sure, there are difficulties, sure, everything breaks, and sometimes you can even fall all the way down to the very bottom, but in the end of the day, you can get up and you can reach the top. And that is the story of Celeste. I really recommend playing the game for yourself, as it is an interesting experience. You can find the game in the description if you want to check it out. And